The Vanishing of the Appalachian Hiker Who Knew Too Much. The Appalachian Trail. The name itself conjures images of serene beauty, a winding footpath through ancient mountains, a sanctuary stretching over 2,000 miles. It's a place people go to find themselves, to escape the noise of the modern world. But the wilderness holds its own truths. And sometimes, those truths are deadly. What happens when the silence of the forest isn't peaceful, but predatory? What if the greatest danger on the trail isn't a wild animal or a sudden storm, but another human being? This is the story of a hiker who went looking for self-discovery in the heart of Appalachia, but may have stumbled upon a secret he was never meant to see. A man who disappeared from one of the most famous trails in the world, only to be found under the most chilling of circumstances. Years later, his case remains cold, leaving behind a terrifying paradox. His belongings were stolen, but the FBI doesn't believe robbery was the motive. This begs the question that haunts investigators and fellow hikers to this day. Why was he killed? This is the story of Scott Lilly, the hiker who vanished after leaving behind whispers of a secret so dark, some believe he was silenced for what he saw. Years later, the trail has kept its secret, and the question remains, what did he know? Section 1. The Hiker. Before he was a name in a cold case file, Scott Allen Lilly was a 30-year-old man from South Bend, Indiana, searching for his path. By all accounts, Scott was at a crossroads. Described by his family as thoughtful and a bit of a dreamer, he was looking for clarity. His sister, Allison Lilly, would later tell reporters, he was a 30-year-old man who was living out a dream. He was just really excited about it, and I just told him that I loved him and be careful. And he was trying to make us proud. Scott had a deep passion that set him apart: American history, specifically the Civil War. His pastor, Craig Clapper, who had actually introduced Scott to the Appalachian Trail, described him as a Civil War buff. This love for the past was what drew him to Virginia, a state steeped in the history he so admired. The Appalachian Trail, carving its way through those historic mountains, offered the perfect fusion of his interests: a physical challenge and a spiritual pilgrimage through America's story. It was this passion that inspired his trail name. For through hikers, a trail name is a new identity forged in the wilderness. Scott chose Stonewall, a poignant nod to the legendary Confederate general Thomas Stonewall Jackson. It was a name that spoke to his historical reverence and maybe to a resilience he hoped to find in himself. On June 15, 2011, Scott, now Stonewall, began his southbound journey. Unlike most through hikers who start in Georgia and walk north, he started as a section hiker in Maryland, with the goal of hiking all the way south to Springer Mountain in Georgia. He wasn't a seasoned expert, but he was determined. His family supported his dream, with his mother periodically sending Walmart gift cards to post offices along the trail, a crucial lifeline for hikers needing to resupply. For 45 days, Scott's journey unfolded as planned. He walked south, through Pennsylvania and into Maryland, crossing the Mason-Dixon line, a symbolic threshold for a Civil War enthusiast. He was living the life he'd imagined: days spent in the rhythm of walking, nights spent under the stars, or in the rustic, three-sided shelters that the trail. He was part of a transient community, signing the shelter logbooks with Stonewall and reading the entries of those who had come before him. His journey was one of quiet determination. Other hikers who saw him noted he was carrying a heavy pack, perhaps a sign of his inexperience, but also of his commitment. He was moving steadily south, deeper into the Blue Ridge Mountains and the heart of Virginia. The trail was providing what he'd sought: solitude, challenge, and a connection to history. But as July drew to a close, Scott Stonewall Lilly was walking toward a patch of wilderness that held a far more recent and far more dangerous secret. He was about to step into the final pages of his own story, an ending that would come not with triumph at Springer Mountain, but with a question mark in the dense forests of Virginia. Section 2. The Final Journey. The end of July 2011 found Scott Lilly deep in the mountains of Nelson County, Virginia. This section of the Appalachian Trail is renowned for its grueling beauty, a roller coaster of steep ascents and descents that test a hiker's will. By this point, Scott had been on the trail for over 6 weeks, covering more than 200 miles. On July 31st, 2011, Scott reached a formidable landmark known as the Priest. This 4,063-foot mountain is a notorious, leg-burning climb. It was here, at or near the Priest, that Scott made his last known contact with his family. He had conquered the mountain. He was also seen by other hikers that day. The morning had been marked by a heavy thunderstorm, making the trail slick and the air thick with humidity. After such a climb, the logical next step was to push on to the next shelter. Based on his location, Scott's destination was almost certainly the Cow Camp Gap shelter. To get there, he would continue along the main trail before taking a short side path, the Old Hotel Trail, which leads to the shelter. The distance from the Priest to the shelter area is about 16.8 miles, a long but achievable day's hike. Just beyond the shelter lay the promise of civilization. From that area, it was only a few more miles to U.S. Route 60, where he could have hitched a ride into the town of Buena Vista for a hot meal and a resupply. This was the vanishing point. Scott Lilly, trail name Stonewall, was last seen on the Priest on July 31st. He was a man with a clear destination, moving along a well-defined path used by thousands. He spoke to his family, was seen by his peers, and then, somewhere in the dense forest between the Priest and Cow Camp Gap, he stepped out of his life and into a mystery. He never made it to Buena Vista. He never checked in with his family again. As the days ticked by, the silence from the trail grew louder. For a family waiting for a call, a missed check-in can be explained away at first. A broken phone, no cell service. But after a week, then 10 days, the explanations were thin, replaced by a gnawing dread. Scott Lilly had simply ceased to be. He wasn't a novice who could have easily gotten lost. He was on a clearly marked trail, heading for a known shelter. The forest he was in, the George Washington Jefferson National Forest, is a managed, recreational area, not an uncharted wilderness. It was not the kind of place where someone could vanish without a trace. And yet, he did. For 12 long days, the wilderness held its silence. The logbooks in the shelters ahead remained unsigned by Stonewall. It was as if the green tunnel of the Appalachian Trail had swallowed him whole. Section 3. The Frantic Search and a Grim Discovery. As the second week of August began, the quiet unease among Scott Lilly's family had become full-blown panic. A formal alert was raised, triggering a multi-agency response involving the Virginia State Police, the U.S. Forest Service, and local sheriffs. Search teams were deployed into the rugged terrain, focusing on the logical corridor of his travel, the stretch of trail south of the Priest. But the search parties found nothing. For days, they combed the mountains, and for days, the mountains offered no answers. The lack of evidence was itself a deeply unsettling clue. If Scott had suffered an accident, he would likely be on or near the trail with his gear. If he had been attacked by an animal, there would be signs. But there was nothing. It was this complete absence that began to point toward something more sinister. Then, on Friday, August 12, 2011, the search came to a horrifying end. It wasn't an official team that found him, but a group of weekend hikers. They were on the Old Hotel Trail, the side trail that services the Cow Camp Gap shelter. There, just off the path, they made a grisly discovery: the body of a man, partially buried in a shallow grave. The scene was immediately secured. What had been a missing person case was now a homicide investigation. Because the body was found on federal land, the FBI took the lead. The body was recovered and sent for an autopsy. On August 16th, the victim was officially identified as 30-year-old Scott Allen Lilly. He had been found just a short distance from the shelter that was almost certainly his destination 12 days earlier. The family's worst fears were realized, but the mystery was only beginning. Months later, in January 2012, the medical examiner's report revealed the chilling details. Scott Lilly had died of asphyxia by suffocation. This was not a random act of violence. Suffocation is an intimate, quiet, and terrifying way to die. It requires complete control and determination from the killer. Some have speculated that Scott may have been attacked in his sleep, perhaps zipped into his sleeping bag, rendering him defenseless. The second crucial piece of the puzzle came from the crime scene. Scott's gear was gone. His blue or purple backpack, his new Ozark Trail hiking shoes, his Nintendo DS, and his Appalachian Trail handbook, all were missing. At first glance, this points to robbery. But then came the statement from the FBI that turned the case on its head. While they confirmed the gear was missing, investigators explicitly stated they did not believe robbery was the motive. This single statement is the dark heart of the Scott Lilly case. If not for robbery, why was he killed? Why murder a man and then encumber yourself with his heavy, used backpacking gear? A killer fleeing a scene would want to be light and fast, not burdened by a 30-pound pack. Taking the gear could have been an attempt to stage the scene or to remove something specific that Scott possessed. The FBI, along with the National Park Service and Virginia State Police, conducted over 83 interviews in multiple states and even 2 other countries. They publicly released the trail names of 5 hikers they wanted to speak with, hoping to fill in the gaps of Scott's final days, though it was later clarified these individuals were not suspects. In April 2012, a $10,000 reward was offered for information. Despite all these efforts, the case went cold. No suspects were ever named. The crime scene, exposed to the elements for nearly 2 weeks, yielded few clues. The stolen gear, a crucial link to the killer, was never recovered. The investigation was left with a collection of deeply disturbing facts that didn't add up: an intimate murder, stolen gear, and an official denial of robbery as the motive. Section 4. The Whispers in the Wilderness. When an official investigation hits a dead end, another, more speculative inquiry begins, in quiet conversations, around campfires, and on online forums. For the case of Scott Lilly, with robbery officially dismissed by the authorities, people were forced to consider a far more unsettling possibility. He was killed for what he knew, or for what he saw. This is when the whispers began. This is the central theory that has kept the Scott Lilly case alive. The hiker who knew too much. It suggests that Scott, on his solitary journey, accidentally stumbled upon some form of criminal activity in the remote backcountry of the George Washington National Forest. In this scenario, his murder wasn't random, but a calculated execution to ensure his silence. So what could he have seen? The Appalachian Mountains have a long history of lawlessness, their remote hollows providing cover for illegal activities. One common theory is that Scott stumbled upon a drug operation, like a hidden meth lab or an illegal marijuana cultivation site. These operations are often protected with paranoid vigilance. A lone hiker appearing out of nowhere could be seen as a threat, a scout for law enforcement, or a witness who couldn't be allowed to leave. While some argue the area is too popular with hikers for such an operation, the vast wilderness offers cover for all manner of sins. Could Scott have witnessed something else? A drop point for contraband? A criminal meeting? Or something even darker, like the disposal of evidence from another crime? If he saw someone burying a body or witnessed an assault, he would have instantly become the sole witness to a major felony. Silencing him would have been the perpetrator's highest priority. This theory gains chilling credibility when you reconsider the details. The cause of death, suffocation, is quiet. It's a method that avoids the loud report of a gunshot, which could echo through the valleys. The act of burying Scott's body, even in a shallow grave, shows a clear intent to conceal the crime and delay discovery. This feels methodical, like someone covering their tracks. And the stolen gear? In this context, it takes on a sinister meaning. If he had stumbled upon a crime, He might have tried to document it. A picture with his phone or camera, a note in his trail handbook. To his killer, Scott's backpack wasn't just gear, it was a potential evidence locker. Taking the entire pack would be the only way to be certain any proof was removed, while also making the crime look like a robbery. This theory, of course, is entirely circumstantial. No evidence of another crime was ever reported near the scene. The FBI has remained tight-lipped about the possibilities they investigated. But in the absence of another logical motive, the theory that Scott Lilly was silenced persists because it's the only one that seems to fit the bizarre facts of the case. It paints a terrifying picture of a man who, in his search for peace, inadvertently crossed into a hidden, violent world. He was in the wrong place at the absolute worst time. The official investigation into the murder of Scott, Stonewall, Lilly remains open but cold. The FBI, despite a wide-ranging investigation, never managed to identify a suspect. The theory that he was silenced for what he saw is compelling because it provides a motive where the official investigation could find none. What do you think happened to Scott Lilly on that lonely stretch of trail in the summer of 2011? Do you believe he stumbled upon another crime, or is there another explanation? Share your thoughts in the comments below. For a case this cold, public attention is the only thing that keeps the hope for answers alive. The story of Scott Lilly ends where it began, in the quiet, beautiful, and indifferent wilderness of the Appalachian Mountains. He was a 30-year-old Civil War buff with a trail named Stonewall, on a journey of self-discovery. He walked into the woods seeking clarity, but found a brutal and inexplicable end. A massive search found nothing, until a chance discovery by fellow hikers revealed his fate. He was murdered, his death quiet and violent, his body hidden in a shallow grave. A multi-agency investigation led by the FBI chased leads across the country, but was left with a paradox. His gear was stolen, but the motive wasn't robbery. For over a decade, his case has remained a chilling, unsolved mystery. No one has ever been held accountable, and his family has never received the closure they so desperately need. His sister's plea from 2012 still echoes. Our family will never be the same. We need closure. The Appalachian Trail is statistically safer than most American cities, with millions hiking it without incident. But the murder of Scott Lilly is a dark reminder that the wilderness is not a perfect sanctuary from the dangers of the human world. His story has become a cautionary tale, a piece of dark trail lore whispered from one hiker to the next. It leaves us with a lingering question. It's not just who killed Scott Lilly, but why? Was he truly the hiker who knew too much? Did he pay the ultimate price for stumbling upon a secret the mountains were meant to keep? We may never know for sure. And that, perhaps, is the most frightening part of all. The killer didn't just take Scott Lilly's life. They took the truth with them, leaving it buried somewhere out there, in the unending silence of the trail.